Boy, what a day. Am I right? Long day for everybody. Tomorrow, I just want to announce that we have a number of fantastic speakers. Dr. Demosthenes Larandos, really one of the pioneers of our past movement. Dr. Abraham Warren Klein, Dr. Douglas Darnell, Gwendolyn Landault, and Michael Goff. All of these are amazing speakers. Before we end tonight, I was thinking, there's a lot of people that still have questions. And while I have the opportunity here, I'd like to ask some of the speakers to come up to the stage, just to diversify this opportunity to continue additional questions that some of you might still have. So I'd like to sort of open this up for another half an hour. And I see Brian Ludmer. Come on, Brian. Mike Bone, come on up. Doug Darnell, you're there. Come on. Pam and Bob. If I could get a live mic, I'd like to walk around the room, ask some questions. Jane Major, come on up. Dr. Campbell, come on up. Okay. I'm going to go out. I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to ask some questions of the various speakers here. I think this will be one more opportunity for you to ask the things that are on your mind.
What association?
Stockholm Syndrome. But I'm not sure I understand your question. It's very similar to the Stockholm Syndrome, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, well, my second question would be, how do you relate this to parental alienation syndrome? To me, it sounds almost like the same. And
exactly.
And if one has been recognized, basically the other one has been recognized.
Right. When a person is in a situation that is being influenced or brainwashed, and especially a child who has to protect the roof over their head, they're going to naturally start to identify with the abuser. And that is the Stockholm Syndrome. So yes, absolutely, that is very similar.
I think the controversy about it has to do with the fact that the debate about parental alienation has to do with the political debate here. And the Stockholm Syndrome is not in the DSM-4 any more than the PAS is, but it's a different context, I think. This context is that of divorce, which is adversarial and acrimonious.
Yeah. Let me throw out an interesting fact. I've been listening to wonderful speakers, and I've been frothing at the bit because I want to talk. But the one interesting statistic is, do you know there is not one diagnosis in the DSM-4 that uses the word syndrome? Not one. In fact, when you look at things like Tourette's syndrome, when they become part of the DSM, they drop the syndrome word and make it a disorder. And I think that's a very interesting fact when you start getting into this little debate about whether it's in the DSM or not.
Over here.
All right,
I have a question about the situation of siblings. In my particular case, I've got two children who would be classified as adults, two who are younger, and that I may have some chance of reuniting with. And the whole family unit, except for me, is very enmeshed and tightly united. And any suggestions on dealing with something like that?
Whoa. You're looking for me again? Unless you have very extreme situations, one of the things, and I get a lot of emails where people want to give me a couple of paragraphs and say, this is my situation, now what do I do? And I think everybody will agree that each individual situation is so complex, there is no magic bullet. But the one advice that I can give is focus on building your relationship and avoid becoming an alienator. Okay? Now, to do that, you have to have, obviously, access to the children. There is no way that you're going to build a relationship when you have no access to the child. It just can't happen. So, you know, just in a very simplistic answer, I think that's what I would have to say at this point, unless someone wants to add to it.
Well, I think listening to what the suggestions have been from Mike Bone and Amy Baker and several others is do the best you can do, and that's all you can do. There are a lot of techniques here that you learned about not to disconnect from the child, not to make the alienating parent a bad person, but just build on relationship and fun and joy and humor and not get into the negative. That's going to be really the key, I think, to success.
And adding to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say another thing that I find myself telling people all the time, and then parents in these very provocative situations, is learn to underreact. When you don't know what to do nothing and just sort of smile. I mean, learn to underreact. I think that's very, very important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow. The other little trick, too, in helping to reduce children's anxiety, be involved in physical activity.
Yeah, that's true.
As opposed to sitting down and looking at each other. That's one of my problems I have with visitation centers. They put you into a room and say, okay, now talk to your child for an hour. I have a healthy relationship with my kids, but an hour is too long. Okay? But if you can engage in a physical activity that is fun, even going to the mall or whatever it is, that helps to reduce the anxiety and adds to the comfort. A lot of times parents will say, what do I do in such and such a situation? The correct answer is, what's going to reduce the child's anxiety?
Right.
That will give you a sense of direction.
Okay, over here, in the white and the white shirt.
Just a second, let me give you the microphone.
I'm so desperate to talk.
Hello? Is it working? It's not working. I hear a lot of people talking about the silver bullet and the fact that it doesn't exist. There are a lot of parents here and people from various disciplines. I'm here from Parental Alienation Awareness Organization. What's the one advocacy thing that you think is not being done that would help people understand what PA is all about? What can we do? That's the question.
I think, to get back on my soapbox, that people need to understand about personality disorders. And they need to understand what it is that makes people behave in the aberrant way that they behave and what kinds of things work. You're not going to heal them, you're not going to fix them, but nowadays there's a lot of information coming out of the High Conflict Institute with Bill Eddy and Dr. Baker and several others, Dr. Darnell, others, about how do you handle these situations, which we didn't have 5 years ago even. There's a lot of new insight about how to deal with these people successfully.
I think you could have the greatest impact by educating judges.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Now, there's a problem there. The judges don't think they need to be educated. But there are judges who routinely attend statewide seminars and national seminars in the whole family law area, and we need to educate judges about how prevalent and persistent parental alienation is.
Right.
Okay, what I'd like to do is, if somebody has a question for a specific speaker, please raise your hand. Okay.
I just wanted to ask Dr. Bone, I mean, thank you all for being up there. Every presentation I've been wildly impressed with all weekend, so thank you. Dr. Bone. Hopefully this isn't too confusing, but do you have an ongoing project or an extension of your presentation? Are you going to be expanding the themes that you've presented?
Yes, actually, I already have a 3-hour treatment audio course, basically, and that was done before this. I was just trying to be a little more original this time because I'd already done that. But I plan to, that's going to be ever expanding, because I think my shift is really more in the educational level. If I was almost going to say, as far as what can be done, I think it really does have come under the banner of education, and it's with judges and other people as well. I think with judges, there is a structural problem, though, because I think they see certain kinds of educational things as being prejudicial, which is a big problem. There's got to be some way around that in terms of the legislature. There was a movement for a while in Florida to have family law judges have to have special training. And I'm sure that's done, state by state differently. But I think that's something. I mean, that needs to be drawn attention, and how really boneheaded a lot of them are. Yeah.
Or need to be.
Okay, is there?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing, by the way, Dr. Bell?
As soon as I said that,
Okay, over there in the gold suit.
Okay, sure. Hold on a second. Let me just give you the microphone here.
Thank you. This is a question for whichever one of you would like to answer. Looking at you up there, that is my dream right there, everybody together. And I think we've all been so impressed with each of your individual positions and statements on this. My question is, and is there now, or is there in the works, or could there be some sort of task force where you all come together and develop, some sort of white paper about what this all is so that we can move it forward?
I think one of the things that is going to come out of this is there's going to be remember I mentioned the special issue of the Family Law Quarterly? Well, there's going to be a special issue of the American Journal of Family Therapy that's going to be drawn from this specifically. So what we can do with that remains to be seen, but I think that's a good beginning, that hopefully we can counterbalance the dangerous direction I think a lot of this is going. So that's certainly my hope. But it's still, we have a field that's divided. And so I think we have to make good convincing arguments as to why the other way of looking at it really is very limited and even dangerous.
I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. Over the years, I've had a great deal of experience with the False Memory Syndrome Foundation located in Philadelphia. This organization developed in the very late 1980s as a result of legions of young adults going into therapy, only to be convinced that all their problems originated when they were sexually abused, typically by someone in their family, and that they'd repressed their memory. But the kindly, knowledgeable therapist was going to help this person recover the memories of the childhood sexual abuse they endured. The False Memory Syndrome Foundation had its own board of scientific and professional advisors. It did, at one time, it did annual conventions. The work was so effective that they don't have to do annual conventions anymore. This group had a profound impact, and it provides a model in terms of how people might organize to deal with parental alienation.
Excuse me, I have one other question over here from, you can have a follow-up question in just a second, but I have one other question here from Penny Fisher.
Hi, I was just wondering, since what alienating parents are doing to our children is criminal, and it's very similar to, as we've talked about, with the cult phenomena, and is it possible that one day parental alienation can become criminalized in the criminal court?
It has
rather
in
than
West
just family
Virginia.
court?
It's become a misdemeanor in West Virginia.
I think we all ought to be looking at action steps, and this symposium is so profound, Joe, to bring the people together. I'm hopeful that you will be able to build on this with future conferences. I hope you're not so burned out with this, or you worked so hard on it. But it's really grand to get us together like this and to have this kind of energy and meet people.
I have another question.
Would you define those as you understand them, especially immersion
Well,
therapy?
immersion therapy, as I understand it, is placing the alienated child with the targeted parent
That's what I thought.
in a stream of constant visitation, so that that child is rebonded with the targeted parent.
Like the Rachel House,
Rachel
be an
House,
example. Okay.
as an example.
Okay. And the differences? You want to know the differences between that and outpatient 1 hour a
The
week?
differences, and if you feel that immersion therapy is a better solution, an effective solution.
Absolutely. I think the proof's in the pudding. I think outpatient reunification therapy is seldom successful if there's a significant amount of alienation, because I think the principles that make this work can't happen 1 hour a week, and it doesn't even work that way. But I think immersion therapy, I think one of the things that Pamela and Bob stressed was the normalization of this craziness that is alienation, because that's what it is a hysterical craziness, and it's a way to bring it back down to earth. So I think that's normalizing things, really.
Let me kind of respond. Again, it kind of goes back to data. I personally have seen where there have been what I refer to as involuntary change of custody, where the child is transferred to the targeted parent. And anecdotally, I've seen a lot of success with that, okay? Judges are afraid of that, and because again, they want to get some kind of data, kind of answering the same question you have: does it work, and is there a risk of harming children? Okay, we have to be prepared to kind of answer that, but with the understanding that there's never an absolute yes or no answer. Everything's based on probability and what are the variables that it can work. So as far as emerging, that's one form. Yes, that can work. Okay. That's where I'm talking about, where it's nice to have a data bank where we can kind of set up criteria and look at these things and eventually show how this whole process works. Now, in regard to reunification therapy, one of the problems with reunification therapy is we don't have a consensus or an understanding as to what the treatment is. Okay? A lot of people that get involved in reunification therapy are traditional family therapists. And yet there is some literature coming out to show that reunification therapy really is a very different kind of therapy. Okay? For an example, you cannot have confidentiality. Okay, that's out the window. The other thing too is that really I very much object to the idea of having the child, the court refer the child to therapy. Because what that says to the child is, you're sick, they hate counseling, and somehow you're supposed to fix it. Unless you have the primary parents involved with clear sanctions for failure to comply, and I'm going to talk about that, I think, tomorrow, you have to get compliance, okay? That, again, is a different kind of therapy. You have to treat the family, the unit, not the individual. And it's true, it becomes more complex when you're dealing with personality disorders. I think unification therapy will not work in the most extreme cases, okay? But in my book, you know, I talk about naive alienation, I talk about active alienation. I think that population can respond to reunification therapy. The severe, or what I call the obsessed alienator, is going to be very, very difficult. But I think we have to develop treatment protocols and then try to validate those approaches to treatment and see where it takes us.
And I would merely add, I think the question becomes, therapy under what conditions? Are we going to try to do reunification therapy to repair and restore the relationship between the children and the targeted parent, while the alienating parent retains physical custody? That's hopeless. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, I see numerous judges and the therapists that they appoint under those conditions beating their head against a proverbial wall in those kinds of circumstances. And it won't work.
Well, I was talking to a judge last week who read my protocol and my 4 tiers and so on, and she said, if you did that, almost nobody would get to Tier 4. And she was extremely excited about what I was proposing. And she said what judges do is they just throw up their hands. They don't know what to do, which was the last remark that I made was if you have people who are functioning as anarchists and you're attempting to impose the law to bring order to chaos, it's not going to work. Our system doesn't work in those kinds of cases, period. The judge is the last person to go to bring order to that kind of chaos.
By the way, next fall, I'm supposed to have a book on reunification therapy and dealing specifically with treatment protocols using a cognitive behavioral model. So that's theoretically supposed to come out next fall.
Well, that pretty much concludes our program for the day. I want to thank all of our speakers that were kind enough to stay the extra time to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Come back again for tomorrow's program.